Hi, I'm Debbie Schwartz. Welcome. I founded Paying for College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group and Road to College. And I'm here tonight with John Fees and Natalie Tarangiola. Did I pronounce that correctly, Natalie?
Close enough, Tarangiola.
Okay, sorry, Tarangiola from GradGuard. And we're going to talk tonight about all the different things you need to be thinking about to protect this important investment that you're about to make, which is sending your kid to college and paying for it. And let me just give you some housekeeping before we really get started. This is set up as a meeting. So in theory, you all could unmute yourself. You could, talk, which is fine. I actually love that when people do it. But if you don't have anything to say, if you can keep yourself muted, that's really helpful so we don't hear background noises. This is recorded. And so tomorrow we send out an email with a link to the recording. And you can ask questions. So ask questions in the chat. In fact, I always love to start off, and I know a lot of people do, tell us where you're from, tell us what grade your student is in. I would imagine that most of the people here tonight have a senior, maybe you even have an existing college student, and you could have somebody younger, but I'd love to know. And great, we got a few people letting us know, rising college freshmen, it makes complete sense. I feel like the people who are here, this is not the last stop on the train, but I have been with you from the beginning for a lot of stops on the train. This is a little bit towards the end before, everybody sends their kids off to college, but it's an important last conversation to have. And I'm glad that John and Natalie are here tonight to talk about it, because a lot of people don't think about the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So great. Oh gosh, people, a lot of rising college freshmen all over the place. Redding, California, New Hampshire, Seattle, Washington, New York. Great. Well, okay. So welcome. We will get started. I know some of you did send in a few questions. We will get to it, but please, as we go along, please put questions in the chat. So welcome, John and Natalie. And I have to tell everybody, I do know John from a long ways back before even getting into this space. And so it's great to talk to people that, from like different parts of life. And I am always thrilled when John's here, because he did start GradGuard and he'll tell you about it, but he's really here just as an advocate for families, that the right information before you're too far along, because this is an important investment. And as we'll talk, we don't always think about all the safeguards related to this investment as we do to other types of investments in life. And I know that that's really important for John to help educate people about what they need to know as they're paying tuition. So John, and we were just talking about it earlier. Maybe just tell a little bit about yourself, and even kind of like how you got started with GradGuard and what was there before GradGuard.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Debbie, you've done such a great job of creating a community of informed parents. It's one of my favorite discussions every time we have a chance to visit. So, well, first of all, I'm a father of 5. I've got one student that just graduated from Arizona State and the Barrett Honors College, and then I've got a rising sophomore at UC Berkeley. And I've got a 16-year-old who is college bound, but is a daily challenge sometimes. And then I've got twins that are 13. So this has been a journey. Debbie and I are really committed to personal financial literacy. I think that when we started GradGuard, Bill Sunnison and I 10 years ago, we saw a real challenge in the country. The whole country is focused on the challenges of repaying student loans. And there's no doubt that the cost of college has really focused all of our attention on the risks that are associated with it. And one of the things I found interesting, I went to Arizona State myself as an undergraduate. I went to graduate school in Boston. And ultimately what I found is that the elite schools in this country had been creating and doing a number of things to protect their students. Some of them actually provide renter's insurance to their students who live on campus. Many of them have offered tuition insurance, a way to protect your investment if something goes wrong. And I said to myself, wow, this is really interesting. Harvard offers something like this, Princeton, MIT does. But Arizona State, UCLA, none of these schools do. And I didn't know anything about insurance, but I really wanted to understand what was the nature of the problem. And the truth is, when I went to college and paid $450 a semester, and I didn't even pay it because I was on
Right.
scholarship, it wasn't much of a risk. And where I lived in the dorms, it really wasn't, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any electronics. I had vinyl records. So for all the parents out there, you're probably a little bit like me. Now you're sending your student to college. Living on campus at Berkeley is $18,000. Room and board total, I think, is about 20. Maybe it was a little bit off on 18. And if my son gets sick, if he has a concussion, if he became an addict, if I died, and he needed to withdraw from school, the university is not going to give you your money back. During the first 3 to 5 weeks of school, most campuses will give you a prorated refund. But the reality is universities are not in a financial position to provide refunds, especially when you're talking about $30,000 or $40,000 per semester for some schools. So tonight, I really want to just talk to you about what we've learned over the last decade building GradGuard. Without GradGuard, I was just telling Debbie, really there'd be no way to protect your investment in education at any school in the country. There are some alternative ways to get your money back, but generally speaking, schools are not going to provide refunds. And most importantly, tonight, I'd like to answer your questions and really share with you the knowledge we have of the types of things that occur on college campuses that you may or may not have thought of, that put your money and your savings and your 529 plans and even your student loans at risk. If you're signing a private student loan as a co-signer, that comes with real responsibilities, both for your student and also for you. And I'm happy to discuss those types of risks as well.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance. I was going to set up a poll, but I am just so curious and maybe if people put it in the chat, if anybody has even thought to look at the college's refund or withdrawal policy, and if they have, what they found out. I tell you, I mean, John is a father of 5. I'm a mother of 3. And when I first went to college, I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about it. I was like, as you said, John, like when we went to college, nobody thought about refunds. And
frankly, it was easier for them to give $450 back
right,
then.
right.
That wasn't going to break the bank for the university. You saw it with COVID. Universities were not in a position to provide refunds. And I think that as consumers, you're starting to see universities have on their front page or their homepage a list of consumer disclosures. And some of the consumer disclosures are really obvious. The Clery Act, which includes information about sexual assault, crime, fires, all that type of data, they're required to provide that. They're also required to provide an example of the refund policy. And what we're really happy to do with GradGuard is we work with over 400 universities, and almost all of them also work with us to help verify that families have been told and informed what the refund policy is. So that, I think all of us and the universities we work with, they're really committed to no surprises. I think one of the things you do great, Debbie, is that, it's a big check to write to support your student, but the reality is nobody wants to be surprised. You don't want to be surprised in the mid-semester that your health insurance doesn't work, or that your home insurance didn't cover your kid's backpack when it was stolen, or that you're out $30,000 because your son's got mono and it's a serious case and he's going to have to come home.
But you even mentioned, so you just said now you work with 400 schools, and schools are, quote, required to show you the refund policy, but that doesn't mean that they still do. I mean, the 400 that you work with, but there's a lot of others that don't.
A lot of schools don't, yeah. I really think that's kind of the unfortunate piece of it. The way universities operate typically is if there's not a fine, they don't have to do it. The Department of Education they'll make a rule, but if there's not a fine associated with it, they don't typically go out of their way to make it obvious. What I would say is all of you, whatever college association, wherever you're going to school, ask your parents' association, and nobody wants to be surprised. This is a bad experience for anybody. The bursar doesn't want to deal with an upset parent. So it's just in everybody's interest to be, and I think COVID really brought this to light, just to be really clear about it. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, why do these schools not provide refunds, or why do they give you 5 weeks of a
Right.
prorated refund, and really it comes down to the return of federal financial aid laws. So here's just a little snippet. You've talked to people about being eligible for student loans and federal student loans and how they're earned. Well, the university only earns that money if you stayed 5 weeks. If you haven't stayed through 5 weeks of classes, that money is returned to the Department of Education. And therefore, they will provide a refund up until the time that money is
Wow. I have to tell you, I didn't even know that. I mean, now it makes complete sense, like, looking at all the refund policies.
In one of the challenges for independent students, especially students that go to community colleges or other things, it's possible that you can stop going to class, either flunk out or drop out, and actually owe the university money because your federal loan has been withdrawn. You're eligible for it, but you only earn the money, and the university only earns the loan if you've stayed through 5 weeks. And so I won't get into all the details, but that's really why universities have a prorated refund. It parallels the return of federal financial aid dollars. There are schools that are increasingly moving to 15 days, prorated through the first 15 days of school. That's on the aggressive side. But most schools will give you some of their money back through week 5. So.
And what are some of like the most common examples of why after the 5th week a student might end up either having to withdraw?
Yeah, so American College Health Association, and Natalie, you can speak to some of these things, is probably the most reliable source for kind of the types of health conditions that students are dealing with. And I think that today, again, is different than when we went to college. The types of medications that students are arriving to college on, the types of diagnoses they're dealing with, from celiac disease to mental health conditions. The reality is more students are enrolled in college with actual chronic health conditions than ever before. So there's a group of chronic health conditions that if you have any of those vulnerabilities, I highly recommend, and I would encourage all of you to speak to your friends that have kids as well. If you have vulnerabilities, you really need to consider how you protect yourself. Now, the other common ones, my favorite is to mention mono. For the last decade, 2% of college kids get mono a year. That's about 3 times the national average of any other population, right? We can all imagine why. A very social time in college, there's no doubt about it. But 2% of 8 million students is a lot. 3% of students have a concussion, report having a concussion. And again, it's about 10% that find that concussion so severe that they really are going to struggle to go through midterms or complete the semester. And so when you total the flu, mono, concussions, and there's one other one. There's 4 major conditions that actually total, if you look at it, about 100,000 students withdraw probably a year for legitimate medical reasons. Now, that doesn't even include mental health. It doesn't include COVID, both of which we cover as well. It also doesn't address kind of the addiction issues that are facing students. And all of those are legitimate reasons why a student might need to leave school early, or as we like to say, they're forced to leave school. Really, they may want to complete the semester, and you as a parent that's paid for the semester certainly would want them to. But the truth is, we've all dealt with our children at different times, and we know our children. And at the end of the day, what we want to do as parents is focus on the well-being of our students instead of the financial exposure we might face. And that's what I feel best about with what GradGuard does, is we really just help families focus on the well-being of their students and basically get a do-over financially if something unfortunate happens.
So you mentioned, if a student has pre-existing condition, is there a list, if that's a parent should check whether or not their pre-existing condition is covered? There's a question here,
It's a really good question.
Yeah, about.
So I'm not an insurance guy to begin with. I'm licensed, but I'm not an insurance guy to begin with. But when we started the company, it was absolutely essential because we work with universities and also because of kind of our values generally. There can't be any gotchas. There can't be any surprises. It can't just be in the small print. But insurance is a highly regulated product. It's filed in all 50 states. And so it does come down to the specific language. And what we know about pre-existing conditions is that, and what we recommend is if you're well enough to start school, then the coverage will be enforced. But what we recommend is that you get a letter from your doctor if you're being treated for general anxiety or for any ordinary disease. But even like pregnancy, we paid tuition claims for a student that was pregnant that needed to leave school because they were forced to be on bed rest, right? Pre-existing condition, started school, you thought you'd be able to finish the semester, wasn't able to. And so these types of things, the best way, if you have any vulnerabilities or chronic conditions, is to get a note from your primary care doctor or whoever the doctor that's treating you to say that you're well enough to start school.
And that would apply to like mental health issues as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Now there's more specific language we can share with you. We get asked this. It's probably the most common question we get asked. The reality is we want to pay claims. Allianz is our insurance company. We're one of these unusual companies. The best thing that we can do is help families through these bad moments. We're not trying to have a gotcha here. At the same time, generalized anxiety, 20% of college students have anxiety. It's natural to be anxious during midterms, but we happen to believe that people want to, they're spending all this time and money. They want to complete the term. And that's what we found. This is just there in the case of a really debilitating semester where you get anxiety, like during COVID. I mean, COVID, we pay for claims related to students who are diagnosed positive with COVID-19 and are forced to withdraw, right? That's all pandemics are excluded from insurance, but we have adopted a business practice with Allianz to make certain that we don't exclude those claims. So if you're forced to withdraw due to that, then that's certainly going to be paid. The important part, though, is it's the other consequence, the other health issues, including anxiety, serious depression, that students really faced this past year. That was really a major source of concern for parents, but also losses.
Yeah. You talk about, what the pandemic has really shown is that yes, kids got sick from COVID, but actually there's more mental health issues that kids are dealing with than maybe we truly imagined.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about that because I think that my wife's a clinical psychologist, actually, so we take this seriously. We've seen it. I really think as parents, all of us, and I think we're seeing it now in the Olympics. We're seeing it in professional athletes. We put a lot of stress on our kids, and this is a very stressful, a very public environment. And what I really think we all ought to do is just not add to that stress with a financial loss. I think we need to give people some grace. One of the things insurance does is give you some space to be able to deal with these events. They're almost always unexpected. Some serious mental health conditions, frankly, only start to emerge in your 19s, 20s. Bipolar disorder, a number of these conditions actually tend to emerge more frequently in college than any other time. So.
What about, let's just talk a little bit about like the actual details. I don't know, do people, like, where would they even go to sign up for tuition insurance? How much does it cover, 100% or less? And then there's a question here. Somebody's asking if I get the doctor letter, saying they're well enough. Like, what do you do with it? Do you just hold on to it in case they have to use it?
Mm-hmm. It just helps you during claims processes. I really, I don't want there to ever be misunderstanding on pre-existing. If it's the best way to assure you're getting paid is that you have a doctor's note that says you're well enough to start school. So I don't really mean for this to be a total advertisement. The primary, goal tonight is to help educate people as to what we're doing, how the risks are. But let me explain how tuition insurance works. It's very similar to travel insurance, except that it doesn't just cover travel. Tuition insurance talks about tuition, but it actually covers the total cost of attendance. So that includes housing and the room and board, academic fees, which for my son at Arizona State was more than the tuition he paid, and tuition. So it really covers that out-of-pocket financial loss. You can purchase it through your school or directly through gradguard.com. If your school doesn't have a partnership with GradGuard, then you can go to gradguard.com and purchase it. It's typically twice as much when a school doesn't offer it. So the typical cost is $106 for $10,000 of coverage per term. That's not very much, to be honest. It's a very fair rate. It's almost half of what it was when we first started the business. And that's because we insure students all over the country, from North Dakota to Alaska to California to New York and Texas. I mean, we have students buying this product all over the country, and that has, because more people buy it, you don't know who's going to need it, but as a result, the risk is better. One of the reasons we could cover COVID is we just didn't cover New York and California, right? We covered every state. So that's how insurance works. The reason it's more expensive to buy it on gradguard.com and the coverage is slightly different is that we are basically taking anybody that comes in off the internet. And so the risk is different for us. And so the price needs to be different. When we work with the universities, say NYU or Harvard or Princeton or NYU or Auburn or SMU or Baylor, lots of great schools. We know that every student will be given the opportunity, and therefore more students will purchase it, and therefore the pricing can be better. And so that's really how the pricing of it all works.
So Kathy's asking, is there a list of schools that you work with, or is it really more that a parent would see, because they're probably going to get a communication from the college itself.
You'll see it, but you go to gradguard.com. We have this school search engine, so you can put your school in it. Neither of the schools that my son sons have gone to currently offer our programs. It's a real disappointment to me. But for lots of reasons, schools, some of them just believe it's something that students should do on their own, families should do on their own. I don't have a problem with that type of decision, but that's not how health insurance works. It's not how other protections work. And I think that what we're going to find is this will become ubiquitous. Although none of us have probably heard of tuition insurance. If I wasn't doing this for a decade, I wouldn't have known really about it. But I really feel like there's an equity piece to the work we're doing. What we're trying to do is make it available to not just elite schools and elite institutions. We're trying to make it available to any student and any family that's paying for college and might suffer a risk. If your school gives you your money back and for housing, tuition, and academic fees, don't buy this, right? We wouldn't build this product. There are lots of ways.
And then let's highlight that college if we find it.
Right, if you find that college. And I'll tell you what, in one of the parents groups I was in last year, they were asking these questions, and I was thankful. So go to your school. If your refund policy is not, clearly disclosed to you, that's a mistake. If they're not offering tuition insurance, that's a mistake.
So I got this question actually in the mail, an email, and I see it's here as well. So if somebody's going to go ahead and purchase tuition insurance, how much are they really purchasing? Particularly if a student is getting scholarships, do they purchase the full amount? They purchase it, net of the scholarships?
Yeah, Natalie's got a great calculator for that. So it's on gradguard.com. You can actually calculate it. But the short answer is it's whatever your out-of-pocket costs are. Many schools give a scholarship, but it's really a waiver. They're just giving you a discount or a waiver or something. So you don't need to buy tuition insurance for that waiver cost. But any of your out-of-pocket cash costs. So say my son went to Arizona State, he was on a scholarship waiver for tuition. All I had to pay for was academic fees, which were $3,000, and living on campus, which is like $14,000, right? So I needed $17,000 of coverage, and I could buy that directly. One of the great things about GradGuard is everybody pays a different amount for college. I think Debbie, you've done a lot to educate people. You have a lot.
It's like the airline industry. Yeah. Somebody sitting next to me could have gotten a great discount, and the other person's paying full freight.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And airlines or cruise ships, everybody pays something different. And so one of the things your organization does such a great job of is helping inform people about that risk and how to negotiate and what the standard award letters are. I think that these scholarships are hard earned, these merit scholarships are hard earned, but the reality is they're also a tool, because an 18-year-old has a hard time to say no to a $10,000 scholarship,
right?
Even though that's a discount.
Right.
I really think we've reached a point in this country where we need to call scholarships for what they are. Now, if you get a scholarship from American Legion or a third party, that's as good as cash. And if you're taking money from the federal government or for a PLUS loan, that's as good as cash. You have to repay that. So you definitely want to cover that amount of financial risk that you have.
Right. So I was going to actually highlight that to talk about if your student is taking federal loans, if you're taking the Parent Plus loan, if you're taking a private loan and something happens and your student has to withdraw, you're still going to be, on the hook for that money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so the other element of private student loans is that if you're a guarantor on those loans, you really need to consider purchasing term life insurance on your child. We don't sell life insurance, but it's really inexpensive. I highly recommend you just get it, even if you don't keep it for long term. At least while you're responsible for those loans, you should be buying $100,000 policy or $200,000 policy for your kids. It's such an inexpensive thing to buy.
So let's just also talk about a little bit. And I know, this is coming up with all the things that are happening in the news recently about, variants and related to COVID. And I cross our fingers that, the kids will start in the fall in person on campus, but sounds like potentially, who knows if there's a risk again of something changing, if they have to go virtual again. That it would be unfortunate, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's they've lost the ability to go to school.
Yeah, so there are three elements of that I think are important. First of all, we don't tuition insurance does not pay for the loss in the quality that might result from the medium that education is delivered in. And so it's unfortunate, but as long as you're earning credits, you haven't suffered a financial loss. You may have suffered a qualitative difference, and I certainly have. I've seen it with my own children. I think so that's first and foremost. I happen to believe that schools are going to be able to remain open. I think we're going to be able to manage through this. I don't think we're going to see outright closures of schools like the Cal State system. I think that we've gotten really good at testing. I think certain schools are requiring vaccinations in certain states. I think we're going to manage it. On the other hand, what we're hearing from our school colleagues is there's a real concern about the pinup kind of Animal House mentality that might arrive on campus. And that extra level of social energy we've all seen it with our teenagers in our own homes. They get a little bit of freedom, and now you see these outbreaks in Arizona and other places. And I think that we're going to see some of that, and it's going to create some more risk. And it's certainly this variant hits people differently. Even the vaccinated students. Yeah. My own son, who was a senior at ASU last year, he got COVID. He was down for 3 or 4 days, but it didn't disrupt his whole semester.
That's good.
He only had a couple of friends that really got very, very sick. So I can't really say it, but what I want to do is, if you have $30,000 invested, this is when you're thankful to have spent $300 on a tuition insurance policy to say, don't worry about it. Let's get you well. Let's do whatever you need to do to be in a good place to finish the semester. And ultimately, Natalie she does a great job of interviewing a lot of the people we pay claims to. And we really want to make certain that they're satisfied. And she just spoke to somebody, I forget if it was Virginia Commonwealth, Natalie, or what school. But the great thing is we want them to go back. Right. Mm-hmm. What school is that now?
Yeah. And so one of them this is a great story. So I handle marketing at GradGuard. My name's Natalie, and I personally speak to members who have withdrawn or they just bought a policy just to see, what were the reasonings behind this? Sometimes they're very personal and you don't have to share that, but sometimes people are really open to talking about their experience. And especially now with mental health really highlighted right now, especially with the Olympics, like you mentioned, John, we're working with some members, and this student was going to the University of Richmond, out-of-state student, so paying quite a bit for tuition, as you can imagine. And she entered with a pre-existing condition. She struggled with anxiety, depression in high school, and her mom bought her tuition insurance policy. And, last year was really tough. So to no real surprise or anybody's fault, things kind of came to a head. It was pretty controlled, but when things started to take a turn for the worse, things were evaluated. It was best to withdraw. And, she filed a claim and that family was repaid $25,000.
Wow.
The entirety of what they had insured with us. And now she's going back to school in the fall. She starts in just a few weeks. So she's on the mend. That time that she was able to recover really sets her up for more success. And without GradGuard, a lot of students and parents tell me that decision to leave really is possible when they have GradGuard.
Right. And can you imagine just the flip side if they didn't have the insurance, and either A, they would be pushing to keep the kid, the student in school to finish, or B, I don't really know that many families that can, comfortably lose, whatever, $20,000 or $30,000.
Yeah, who can? And you want to put your child's interests first. And of course, this is a really individual decision that comes to terms, but the students say, they could not bear to think of what would happen if they were the cause of that to their parents. They already feel terrible. They're not in a good mental place, and to put that on them as well. So it's just really amazing to be able to hear her story, and she hopes to help other people with that. So it's great.
I saw a question there, Debbie. Somebody asked, why are coverages different? And different versus school versus GradGuard.com. It's all because of the risk.
Oh, I think she's also asking, I don't know if this is the case, is it coverage different at different schools that may have, GradGuard?
It is, the coverage is the same. It's called the tuition protection plan. So the features that are contained, so we cover 100% of mental health conditions and ordinary illnesses. So it's that we treat them both the same. We require a physician or licensed mental health professional to verify that. So the coverages are the same. The price might be a little bit different depending on how the school implements the program. So if the school integrates it with the billing process so that every student can easily purchase it, that's the lowest, most affordable way to buy it. There are other schools that don't really want to do that, and they basically, as a result, have lower participation rates. And so the rate is slightly higher. Sometimes it's a 1.25, so it's $125 versus $106. And we have a couple schools that are basically very, very passive about it, but it's still less expensive than going directly to GradGuard. I'm thankful that we can offer at any price on GradGuard.com. Basically, we're inviting people that are risky without the rest of the students ever knowing about our product. And so that's a hard thing to do, and it's a very hard thing to price right. The insurance company, Allianz, world's largest insurance company, they're not in the business of losing money, but they are. We're committed to is making certain that all 8 million undergraduate students have the opportunity to enroll and protect themselves. And when that happens, the price is going to get lower, right? That's the way insurance works, is the price gets lower, the coverage improves. And if you go back 10 years ago, you'll find out our prices were almost twice what they are today. So
an important detail, but when do people have to buy it? Because sometimes, I don't want people to think like, school has started and then they see their students sick and then I'm going to be able to sign up for it.
Natalie has to remind me to say that because I've been doing this for so long.
I forget
before the first day of school. Yeah.
So that's important. That's really important.
Yeah. And you know what? If you think your school's going to handle it differently, you can't find I can name a dozen schools that you can't find the refund policy. It drives me nuts. But if that's one of your schools, then you should ask the bursar, you should ask the financial aid office, you should ask the Parents Association, where is a refund policy? It's a legitimate question, and especially post-COVID, they have whole pages of what will happen under COVID, breakouts. So there should be at least a page that tells you what will happen if your son or daughter is forced to withdraw from school.
So there's a quick question about, does the insurance also cover if you're taking money for a 529 plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So any form of cash that comes from a third party, like American Legion Scholarship or an employer scholarship program, or your 529 or a PLUS loan or a private student loan, that's all the same form of cash. The only thing that's not considered cash is like a tuition waiver or a scholarship that's provided by the institution. That's not third party money. All right, there are third-party monies that are given to students from a scholarship foundation, for instance, within school. That's real cash, but if it's a waiver, it's not. or a discount. Yeah.
So, if people have more questions about tuition insurance, absolutely
Call
share it
me,
here.
email Natalie and I. We're happy to talk to you.
And we'll bring it up again. I do want to just get to talk about a few other types of insurance that are kind of just as important. And I actually got this question emailed in about a parent who basically, and I hadn't thought about it this way myself, but she kind of added up all the electronics her son had, and she thinks, he could have between $8,000 or $10,000 worth of stuff. He's bringing them to a dorm. I only hope the best thing, but you don't know who the roommates are. You don't know if they lock the door. You don't know what friends they bring over. And, that equipment could be at risk, and along with other stuff that you might bring to school.
Yeah. So living on campus, most freshmen are required to live on campus these days. And so that requirement by schools, though, exposes all of us and all of our students' electronics and their personal property to real problems. So we've got some great testimonials. Natalie can tell you about a couple in a minute. They're YouTube interviews with these students. One was, I'll let you talk about the slime one, Natalie, and a couple others in a second. But here's the thing. You might hear from your insurance agent, or you might hear from somebody at a university housing office, oh, don't worry, your homeowner's insurance will cover that. Don't rely on homeowner's insurance. That's my number one advice to people. For $15 or less a month, you can purchase a renter's insurance policy that will not affect your students' insurability in the future, will not affect your rates, will not be subject to a $1,000 deductible, which most homeowners insurance policies are, and will replace your stolen backpack. A stolen backpack is typically about $3,000. It includes an iPad, a computer, and the books are the $300 and $400 books. That's the thing people don't realize. And all of that can be sold on the secondary market to feed a drug addict or to feed any number of other problems. And students are much more vulnerable to that. And theft on campus is a big deal. We've got a bunch of data on the FBI things. Let me give one other issue, though. There are 2,000 fires reported every year in college student housing. There are 3 million students who live on college campuses. 2,000 fires. Well, that's not a big deal. Well, fortunately, after the Seton Hall fire, that really was a tragedy 20 years ago, almost every university has installed fire suppression systems. And so when that soccer ball or that fire happens,
or it could just be smoke. It doesn't even happen to be an actual fire.
Popcorn.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Popcorn that has been neglected. The sprinklers go off, and our typical liability claim is $60,000. And so, and why is that? It's all the electronics that are ruined. And again, my vinyl records were not going to be at risk at Arizona State.
Right.
But I didn't even, we didn't own computers back then. So
right.
I really think it's the easiest purchase to make. GradGuard works with schools directly. We make it easy, but you can also buy at gradguard.com. The key about renter's insurance and what we designed, it's the only program designed in the country for students. There's lots of good places to buy renter's insurance. So my big thing is just get it. But there are gotchas, and a classic gotcha is the deductible is not set at $100. They're typically set at $250 or $500. And so that doesn't cover your bike. That's an inexpensive bike. The second thing is they almost always have electronics limitations. So Lemonade, which is a pretty popular company right now, they have electronics restrictions. So you can only typically, on a typical policy, it's $1,500 of electronics that they'll pay for. We don't have that. Again, we work with universities. We want to get people to get a do-over if something bad happens. So. And
what about renters insurance for off-campus living?
Absolutely. Many of the off-campus housing companies require it. They often offer their own program. I would be careful to make certain that it covers contents. Many of the student liability programs that are out there only cover the liability of the student. They don't cover for the damages they might cause. They don't cover contents. So my own feeling is renter's insurance is the smartest purchase you can make for typically our typical policy is $13 a month. So that's, Natalie, would you tell that story about the slime or either one, whatever?
Yeah, there's laundry. There's some crazy testimonials.
Laundry is a good one.
So when I reach out to members who we paid a claim to, sometimes I have no idea what they're going to tell me about. It just says theft or something really simple. And I mean, I spoke to a student who was doing laundry on his dorm room floor during midterms, didn't think much of it, and his laundry was stolen. And so we paid for that. There was also a student who went to spring break. This was right before COVID became a thing. And she got a call from her school saying, there's a pipe burst in your room, you got to come back. So she comes back and everything's covered in water, but it's been a few days, so it's kind of slimy instead. It's just really disgusting. And renter's insurance covered that. And so it's these really unexplainable things that people would never think would happen to them. And it's their parents who bought them a policy, and it was just them being proactive, or they got it and you're really banking on your laptop getting stolen, and that's the only thing you think is going to happen. And of course, it's never that simple. And so it's these really crazy stories that you think would never happen to you. And like John said, we have some on our YouTube page, and that's what we reimburse for.
So somebody is asking, if these situations happen, that they report it to the school. Should they be reporting it to the school police?
Campus police, we need a police report filed for theft. Mysterious disappearance happens, right? That's typically called theft, and it is covered. So that's the classic where the backpack was there when I went to the bathroom at the library, and then it was gone. That's the classic situation. We've had claims for purses and expensive coats. I mean, you can imagine the types of things our students all have. I just think it's a really smart purchase. We've had students file 3 claims in a year. It's shocking, right? But I think that the truth is students are more vulnerable than we all realize. I think
it's the first time that they're living on their own. They don't realize. I mean, I see it all the time with my own kids. They'll leave. Well, this was when we, before COVID, when we would hang out places, they would leave their laptop and say, I'm just going to the bathroom. Okay, well, that's nice. But you left like important stuff sitting there. And you think you're going to be back quickly, and you might be back quickly, but it only takes a second for somebody to come in and swoop stuff.
Yeah, I think Natalie, her experience visiting the students, and I used to do this, or the people we pay claims to, a lot of these are now on YouTube. And so you can go to our GradGuard channel on YouTube and hear directly. Our position is show, don't sell. We want you to hear the stories. And when you start to when you go to your cocktail parties, your parents association meetings, or different things, you're going to hear these stories. It's just a guarantee. My one son had 3 bikes stolen in college. I mean, thank God we didn't buy an expensive bike, so.
Okay, so there's a few other types of insurance I think is worthwhile talking about. And actually these you guys don't even offer, but I know that you have good tips about it. Talk about health insurance.
So this is really important because it's one of those things that can cost you money without realizing it. So many schools implement a student health waiver program where you have to waive off and show that you have insurance equal to the standard that they want you to have. So at UC Berkeley, I have to upload my family policy so that we don't get charged $3,500 for their policy. Now, I think there's good reason why schools offer student health insurance, but if you already have coverage, you definitely don't want to be billed twice for it. That's a certain way to save yourself some money, to make certain you're absolutely not paying twice for health insurance. Now, the other piece on student health and well-being is make certain you know where the student health clinic is. Most universities have some health services. They most also have counseling and consultation services that are either direct billed to the student or just something that you should be available. So you don't have to go to an urgent care for that type of service. The other thing that's happened with COVID is virtual care. So the on-call Zoom doctor appointments, that's become ubiquitous on college campuses. And that's a really important thing. If it's a feature of your current family health plan, you can save yourself that $100 deductible instead of going to urgent care when your son or daughter is sick. So it's really about well-being of your student, but it's also about being smart about the coverage you're already paying for.
So actually, I don't have this that often, but I see that Madeline Gimbel, you've raised your hand. Do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yes.
Great.
Granddaughter overseas for the summer. Passport's missing. Inside the passport was a SIM card. Is the SIM card covered?
So we provide worldwide property coverage. I would think the SIM card is considered property. You just need proof that, and the question is, what's on it? It may have been really valuable. We don't cover what's on
Never
it.
been used, never been
Yeah.
used.
So that should be covered. It's property, and if you have proof of purchase, that's easy to establish. By the way, it's fairly easy to establish proof of ownership of electronics, either through credit card statements. Apple's got a whole database. We actually can tie into some of those services. So yeah, that should be covered under, we have worldwide property coverage. Again, students they travel for spring break, they go overseas, they do study abroad during the summer, just like your granddaughter. That's our policy. There can't be a gotcha for property coverage.
I think I'd be
Drops or
more,
iPhone?
I would be more concerned, Madeline, about the passport.
Drops, that's a different story. Drops or
Right.
iPhone? Breaks or iPhone, $1,300. What
I wish
happens?
we don't cover accidents. And
Okay.
that's what Apple Care is great for. That's just it would drive up the cost. We'd like to provide
Oh,
it, but it
sure.
would drive up the cost. So we
Okay,
basically said, buy your Apple Care from Costco or Apple or wherever you want to buy it from. We're decided to not get into the accident business.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No
That's great.
problem. Yeah.
Go grandparents. I think thank goodness for them. So
Okay. And not last, but how about talk a little bit about, and I know this is not a pleasant topic either, but life insurance for
Yeah.
students and life insurance for parents.
yeah, Debbie, I've talked a lot about it. I think that the life insurance is so inexpensive for students. So if you're borrowing to fund your students' education, if you've got plus loans, or if you're a co-signer on private loans, you should think of purchasing term life insurance, which is very affordable to cover the repayment of that in the case of the death of the student or in the case of your death. Though there's not going to be loan forgiveness for these types of loans. There is loan forgiveness of the federal loan programs, but not typically of the private loan programs. So, there are a lot of tragic stories that you just don't want to think about. But I think really buying life insurance to ensure your capacity to repay those loans in the case of your death or the case of the death of a student, and also in case of your untimely death, and I think about it myself, I'm well insured, but at the end of the day, it's still a big check for my next 3 kids that are aiming for college.
Yep,
right?
yep.
And no matter, and who knows what the 529 stock markets are going to do and whether or not that's going to be enough money. And who knows, right? Life insurance just gives me some confidence that we're going to be able to pay for school if my wife or I are not around.
Yep. And unfortunately, and I've had friends that, have had untimely deaths. And even if you're not taking out loans, you still want to reconsider life insurance. And I have found that people think, well, my child's 18, I don't need that life insurance anymore. But actually, you might need it even more for them to make sure if something happens to you, that they can continue to get through college and you can have, money for a surviving spouse.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so the other element is if you've been saving in a 529 plan, whatever that money was you were saving for your 529 plan, you don't necessarily need to keep contributing because you're not going to see a lot of gain probably in the stock market for that asset. Take that same amount of money and start buying an insurance policy for your son or daughter, because that not only will cover the costs, but it will also ensure their insurability. They can eventually take over the policy. But today we have so many chronic health conditions, you don't realize when you're young and healthy is the best time to buy these types of policies. So.
Okay, another little detail question, but Lori's asking, are renting safes in the room required to have renter's insurance? Hadn't thought about that.
Not. No,
Yeah.
no, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
Just don't take valuable jewelry. I mean, we've seen some pretty large claims. We work with some really expensive schools. I just really do not bring expensive jewelry to school. That's number one. That's what you need, or watches, that type of thing, or heirlooms. I mean, I'd really discourage that. I think safes can be smart. I just really recommend don't take a lot of expensive things. Second piece is take pictures of all the receipts you have. It's so easy. Just put them on your phone, create a little folder. You're going to spend a few $100s, probably. Some people even spend a whole lot more. Just as you get ready to scroll, take some of those pictures. And my recommendation for renter's insurance is get it to start before you move, in case your stuff during moving day gets stolen. All right.
Which is also a very,
it happens.
happens
It
a lot.
every year.
Yeah.
It happens every year. They're just so easy to
They
leave
know,
something like that.
they're watching, they know that people are moving in. It's hard to keep track of all the items coming and going.
Yeah. So
I had also gotten a question about what if somebody doesn't take out insurance, tuition insurance the first semester, but they decided they wanted a second semester. Can they do
you can
that?
buy it. Yeah, you can buy it per term. So that's again where you expose yourself to some risk, right? You think you're perfectly healthy, and then sophomore year you basically realize my son or daughter may have a different condition. Absolutely, you should buy it the year you want. We typically see freshmen and sophomore parents buying it the most often. I think by the time you're a senior, you tend to have a lot of confidence that your son or daughter can kind of navigate the process. There is a window that is students are most vulnerable, because if you can get past Thanksgiving, most times you can get an incomplete. And so I totally accept that that's a real strategy, a risk mitigation strategy. But that, for freshmen to navigate how to get incompletes and how to get out of that whole trap of doing that is not easy. So.
And Patricia is asking, kind of related to that question, if you purchase annually versus on a term, is there a price break? I'm assuming if you're asking, is there a price break if you buy it for the full year?
There is not right now. We're working on that. We're also working on a discount for buying both products right now.
Somebody asked that earlier.
Yeah, we don't. We work with two different insurance companies currently, but we're working on that. We hope to have that for 2022. And what I can tell you is, these products were hard to build. Nobody really wanted to provide renter's insurance to college students. They thought of Knuckle House or Animal House, Knucklehead kids. This really, and you don't want to have a credit check, and everybody's insurable, even 17-year-olds, like all the things that a university knows their student population need. $100 deductible. And we, by the way, won't file a report to the insurance claims group. There's a national insurance claims group that they know if you file claims. We don't do that, right? And we don't do that because we don't want that to count against you in your future insurability. That's the right way to do business. So, but this has not been hard. This has been hard to build because it's regulated in all 50 states, and to make certain there's no gotchas in it. So the next wave is for our next million insureds is to find ways to create discounts for people who buy both policies, and really just continue to improve the types of coverages that we offer. So,
do you have any sense that you can give people what it costs for renter's insurance?
Yeah, renter's insurance. So $5,000 policy with $100 deductible, and typically $50,000 of liability coverage. Although we're seeing a lot of families take $100,000 these days. That's typically around $13 a month. So $155 a year, somewhere in there, $165. A little bit depends on kind of what state you're in. It is priced pretty much by state. So I will say some of the Midwest states are pretty affordable, and some of the urban centers are more expensive.
Okay. Any parting words or anything else that you think that we didn't cover tonight? Lots of great questions. I had, people send in their questions.
First of all, I think this is, Debbie, I always love having these conversations. The goal here is just to make certain that we're all informed, that we're not surprised. And I think as other parents and grandparents that are on the phone, one of the things you can do is just help people know about Debbie's work and what's happening here, and that that you're not alone. There are 8 million students in the country going to college right now. You're not alone. This is a journey we're all on. It's not risk-free. I think some universities pretend that everybody graduates. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Some people pretend that all degrees are equal. They're not. An art degree is lovely, and my kids play music, and I love them to want to do that, but I don't want to spend $250,000 to do that unless they're going to really have a career in that, right? So there's a place to get all forms of education at the right price point. But just don't be surprised, and help other parents through this journey. Share these resources with them, and make certain you're asking the right questions of your institutions.
Yeah, the questions it's like dear to my heart. I just want to make sure that people aren't afraid to ask questions, that they know that they have the right to ask questions, that they get information, for anything that they're still wondering about. So, and I also hope that, throughout this whole process, and even this piece of the process, that it's a good lesson for kids, for your students. I mean, they're going to have to encounter insurance in lots of different forms later in their life. This is just the start. So involve them, like tell them why you're, purchasing and what it's all about, because they're going to, at a lot of different times, look into renters insurance, when they have their own apartment or houses, homeowners insurance, life insurance, and nobody really teaches you about that.
Nobody does. It's financial literacy. I think I was going through the FAFSA process with my son just to go through it with him so he understands how this really works, but then also to talk through the insurance pieces. I think financial literacy, it's adulting 101. And, we really try to make that a part of what we do. It's also, we send emails to our members about reminding them of taking pictures of their property and taking pictures of their staying healthy. We do that. We don't want to just provide insurance. We want to be there if something bad happens, and we want to educate people in the process. So the only thing I'd otherwise ask, visit gradguard.com, see if your school has a program with us. You'll get preferred pricing. If they don't, ask your school why not. And then lastly, go to our YouTube channel. You'll hear testimonials. You'll hear real stories about this program, and share them with your parents' organizations so they understand what you now know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will include that in the email tomorrow. So open up that email. So you'll have the link to the YouTube channel. There'll be the link to the recording here, link to, we have some charts to just, kind of summarize some of the things that we talked about tonight. And any questions, I saw, Natalie, you put your email in the chat, and we'll also include that. I know that Natalie and John are open to answer anybody's questions. If something comes up or something hits your mind tomorrow, next week, definitely shoot them an email, and I'm sure that they'll be able to help you out.
Absolutely. Debbie, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both, John and Natalie.
Good luck,
Thank everybody here who came.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.